Okay. People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes, something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it, and the soul can't rest. Then sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back and put the wrong things right.
All right. Based on that synopsis, I want to make it clear we're discussing The Crow, not Catwoman.
Oh, please. Anyone with half a brain should know that, I hope.
Oh my gosh. The first time I saw the trailer for that Halle Berry Catwoman, I was like, did they just take the premise of The Crow and replace it with Cat?
Wish they would have taken the premise of killing it, but anyway.
All right. Welcome to the Requel podcast. What we discuss here is basically we take a movie that we liked or maybe didn't like, and we discuss, should we reboot it? Should we make a sequel, a prequel? What should be done? And what we do is we take that and we create our own idea of a story that we would like to pitch for that franchise. And with me today is the great and powerful Phil. Welcome, Phil.
I wish great and powerful. Hey, hey.
He a little faith. And we're discussing The Crow, the original Crow, the one with Brandon Lee. Now, we might make a mention real quick. We'll run through the sequels and everything, but what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the first one. Now, this movie came out in, was it 92 or 93?
No. Release date May 13th, 1994.
Man, I wrote it down wrong, but for some reason I was thinking earlier. Oh, great! The dog.
Dog said 94 time.
See, it was right at that time where I remember seeing the previews and I remember seeing the poster at the theater, and I wanted to see it so bad, but my mom kept saying things, and we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, but I don't know. I was just kind of fascinated by the film, by the imagery, and I didn't even know it was based off a graphic novel at the time when it first came out.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I might have learned that a little later too. But I remember I was in high school. I was in 10th grade, and I think it was a Friday night. My friends went without me because I don't know. It might have been somewhere with my parents. I was so mad. I was like, "You guys, you went without me." They're like, "Oh, chill. We'll go the next night." Then we tried to go Saturday, and it was sold out. I was like, "Oh man."
Stupid friends.
Because I think it was only at a few theaters, at least around here. So it sold out quick. Because
I don't remember if it was a massive release or not. I remember it was a surprise hit. Part of it was fueled by the death of Brandon Lee.
Oh yeah.
Which was tragic, and that's a whole nother discussion of just that family, that curse. It actually changed. It changed movie policy because the prop master had left early or whatever, and
yeah,
it changed.
I think they discussed the whole thing. What was it? Was it Unsolved Mysteries or some TV show? I remember that they actually went over the whole thing, what happened and what happens when the difference between a live bullet and a blank and stuff.
And the thing is now, I mean, you don't have to worry as much about that because everything's done CG post-production. You just have to basically hold the gun and pretend like you're pulling a trigger. But I remember, I think the first time I was aware that it was a graphic novel is when I read something that said the best comic book film since the first Batman. And I was like, it's a comic book? And then I was looking for the book to read, and I read it, and the book is good and very sad.
Yeah, I think like I said, I didn't think I knew till then either that it was a graphic novel, because I think this was the days
Hold on a second. I think
Okay.
someone's here. I bet it's not Janine. Hold on.
But yeah, until Tyler gets back, yeah, he was saying, everything's all CGI now. I'm guessing that's why back in the day, the budget for this movie was 23 million, and the gross was like 50.6. So I mean, they made their budget back. So it was a hit. It was probably like they didn't expect much from it. 94. I don't think they expected much from comic book movies if it wasn't like Batman or something. But what else?
So, do you remember the first time you read the graphic novel?
Yeah, and it was later on. Yeah, I remember there were some differences, but that's I think when it really hit me. It was like the main villain in the movie. I don't think they ever call him by name ever.
No, the villains in the book are much more in the background, non-named. Not really anyone.
I mean that main guy, Top Dollar, which you don't even know in the movie unless you look at the credits.
Oh yeah, he's a great actor, man. He don't do anything anymore, but he always played a great villain.
But no, I was just saying what you were while you walked away. The budget, I guess their budget was 23 million, and they made like 50.6.
Back when movies had moderate budgets, now when they're like 200 million.
Like you were talking about the guns and everything. I mean, because they probably had like little CGI in it. The crow maybe. And he's healing, yeah.
Whoa! Whoa! I don't know. That might have even been like practical, like just because the way the shot's done, like reverse it, so like you could. I don't know. But
so they really shot him. They really shot him in the hand, so that when they just reversed it.
I wish they could have kept me, but you make the maquette, and then because the way he's holding his hand, and if you push it, I don't know. You could do it practical. But the remake or the first one was so good.
Yeah.
And then came the sequels. And then number 2, City of Angels, was a cool idea. Written by our lovely friend David S. Goyer. And the problem with that film was the studio got involved, cut stuff, changed stuff. And then the bad guy just didn't work.
And yeah, everything was like a pale comparison to the first one. And I think that I don't know if it's the studio or what, but they're like, you have to have the set formula. If it's the Crow, you have to have like 3 or 4 underlings. You have to have the main bad guy,
who's like some mystic weirdo. Like, you can't just be some regular dude. Just some and I mean,
well, yeah. Well, again, like just like the first movie, they get when Top Dollar tries to take his blood or whatever and take his power. Yeah.
Bang! I'm dead.
I love that though. I love that movie.
It's a crazy scene. What do you call it? And then, I mean, I liked in the City of Angels so that it was between a father and son. I liked that dynamic change. And the fact that this is the only Crow film that's actually a sequel, in a sense, because, yes, it's in L.A., but it's the little girl from the first one now grown up. And she recognizes the Crow in Ash. So, all right. I'm like, okay, I'll go with it. And if I remember right, in the graphic novel for the original, they don't even give him a name. I think it's just Eric. They don't give him the name Draven. That was given in the movie. I wanted to reread the book before this, but I didn't have a chance to find it because I don't have it, and I should. I even met James O'Bear and talked to him a little bit. Very reserved guy. Very reserved guy. And then we get the Crow Salvation, which was probably the best of the sequels, but suffered from massive budget cuts. Like, it was a direct-to-video film.
Yeah.
And it had the better story and idea, but, man, was it just on the cheap. Did you ever see that one?
Since we've been talking about doing this, I've been trying to remember. If I did, I don't remember it.
It's the one that has Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah, I knew she was in it, but I had no memory of it. So if I saw it, I probably didn't. But I think after 2, I was just like, I mean, this isn't the original.
And then came the worst sequel of all time, The Crow Wicked Prayer.
I definitely didn't see that.
It has Eddie Furlong. It had like Tara Reid. That is like, it just, I can't even form sense. It's just bad.
I think that
it is just bad.
I think that's what I heard of. Like Crow 4, Eddie Furlong. I'm like, Tara Reid. Oh, I'm out.
Yeah, I was like, just the whole premise was just too much. Like, man, I don't even want to get into it. And then do you remember they did try to make a TV series?
Yeah.
Was it Stairway to Heaven or something like that, or
Highway to Heaven? Yeah, something
like that. Yeah, I don't remember. I remember seeing an episode or two. I remember how like the crow face paint was kind of like this mystical, like mask thing that would come. Like he didn't always have it. It was So it's another one of those properties that starts off really well, and then in the process of being turned into a franchise, it just goes down because they miss the core essence of what the story is. And so, the thing about The Crow is, they can be connected, but they don't have to be exact sequels of each other.
Exactly. All you need is that
each
premise.
film's a standalone.
All you need is that premise of The Crow bringing somebody back.
And I mean, in each film, it can kind of be set up as a new film, a new story, and you find unique ways. Like we said, I mean, even in this Crow Salvation, the third one, the guy is blamed for the murder of his girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a little different. In City of Angels, a father and his son are murdered. So that's a different setup, than the first one where Shelley is beaten and murdered, and then Eric is murdered. So, I mean, each one has a different premise. So now we've kind of got our idea out of the way of what it is. Phil, tell us what your pitch and style of where you would take this property. You go first before me.
I love that first movie, and I'm always like, oh, it's so pure, it shouldn't be remade. But if you're gonna remake it, I mean, really make every movie unique and original. I mean, you don't have to be linear with these movies. I mean, if you do like your first movie that's like the Brandon Lee Crow, okay, do that. Then the next one, I mean, you could have, I don't know, The Crow in the Old West or something. World War II. I mean, you could have it set 100 years from now. I mean, that's the thing. Make them all period pieces. That way you keep it fresh. Everyone has its own distinct, like story and theme to it. So, I mean, you're really going to get arguments from people if if you have to remake it. People are going to be like, "Well, I like that second one." Because everyone has like their favorite setting, and whether it's like, some old period style thing or some future thing or a present day thing.
And with my pitch is, it doesn't have to be remade. Like, you just make a requel, like straight up. You make a sequel that continues because it's a reboot sequel. It is because there, like we said, there's not enough connective tissue that each film is not tightly connected that you can do a reboot and a sequel. So this is a story idea I had. I've actually had kind of this in my brain for years. I actually started writing a script for it at one point, and I lost it in a move. So I was kind of rehashing out, but you just inspired me. There's one thing I'm kind of rolling my head right now that if I would want to do it or not, but maybe the setting right now I thought of originally. Okay, my pitch would be for modern day, but at the same time, I'm kind of toying with now Victorian era. It can be Victorian England, Victorian the United States, but just that era in the background. So here
Exactly.
goes. Here goes my pitch. Title: The Crow Crucifixion. The story will introduce several elements that were not originally in the film but were in the comic, such as the Skull Cowboy. It will not reference anything that came before it. It'll be a standalone, but like we discussed, it'll be in its own. They all can connect, but they don't have to because the Crow is the connection. The main character is Victoria Cross. She is 25 years old, has a 17-year-old sister who has a kid, so her nephew. Victoria is a high school arts and drama teacher. During one of her lectures, we see the crow mask in the background. So it kind of gives more of a reasoning why that face is chosen when she comes back. So it's going to be talked about in the sense of like comedy and tragedy and the sad clown and death. We'll spend about 20 minutes getting to know her at the beginning of the film. She's bumbly, she's likable, she's sweet, somewhat awkward and goofy, and she has a date. She has a blind date with a cop named Brandon, and after the date, she takes a cab, or depending on the setting, Uber, Lyft, whatever, to her parents' home. When she gets there, the house is being robbed and pillaged, and a few members of her family are dead. Her sister and her nephew are still alive. The crooks manipulate her and say they won't kill her nephew if she writes a note saying that she killed everyone and that it was all her. Victoria takes the blame for the murders, and then they make it look like she kills herself in a suicide. And then when the police show up, it's a bloody massacre, and it looks like some sort of like cult ritual. Victoria is then labeled as a psychopath, and because of her social awkwardness, people believe it, and her memory is ostracized. 1 year later, the crow returns and resurrects Victoria. But this is the biggest changes. Most of the films, we don't get a chance to get to know the character before their death. And I really want to hit on her. You get to know her so that when she comes back as the crow, she's a completely different person. She's not her. She is like the avatar of vengeance and revenge. And yet, slowly as she gets memories back, we see a little bit more of her. But we get to experience her before we see how BA she is when she gets back. There'll be a scene of her getting her memories back and how much pain it is. And one thing I want to put back in the film, and this is where it ties back to the original, is in the original, there's a scene where Brandon Lee's crow tries to kill himself. And what we find out is any pain that he gets is healed unless it's self-inflicted. That's why later on he has those like electrical tape bands on his wrists. So I thought if we could put something back in there where she like hurts herself and it doesn't heal, just to kind of help drive that point home. So Victoria ends up reliving her last days and starts tracking down the crooks. I don't want the crooks to really be characters. You know how in the original we get cut scenes that shows Top Dollar and his men hanging out and what they're doing and where they are. I don't want the crooks to get any screen time other than when Victoria is on them. I really want this to be a character piece of her, and we'll bring Brandon back as a cop who who just had a date with her and doesn't believe that she would do this. He's been investigating in the background. So I don't want any cutscenes of the villains except when she interacts with them. We'll have more scenes of her and the bird acting like one. And each time she takes down one of the people that wronged her, she becomes stronger. And a new element I wanted to add is that the crow itself, the entity, resonates that whoever becomes the crow can tap into memories and emotions of previous crows. It's like when the soul is brought back, it's connected to a larger force now. So she has the knowledge of, like I said, if this is, say this is a sequel and not set in the Victorian era that I'm now running with in my head, she could remember Eric Draven. She could remember Ash. If she chose to, like she's now part of a lineage. So I said it's a personal drama. She learns more about how she is looked at. The final shot of the film will be a flashback of shots of Victoria's body on the morgue table, with the doctor and police captain Lee mentioning how her body is holding on to life, but the brain is dead. The doctor will mention something about the brain processing trauma as its last moments in dying. There's a part in the book that I tried to find the panel online that basically referenced that the idea of the Crow book, that it could just be a fantasy that Eric's having as he's dying, trying to deal with the death of Shelley and what just happened to him, that it's not real. So I kind of wanted to toy with that idea, and then as she's laying there on the table, we see a crow fly and land on the ledge right outside the morgue, and that's where it cuts to black, and that would be the film.
All right. I gotta share my thoughts.
All right.
Well, first of all, before I forget, no, it has to be real, no fantasy. But I think
I just want to toy with the idea.
Yeah, but you said Victorian England. I mean, that just goes to my point. I'm like, you could set these, everything could be a different setting, a different time. Victorian England, as you were talking about it, I was thinking you could do medieval times. It could be a knight. It could, you could do anything. And I mean, in these days of like, people looking for more female-driven movies like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, I mean, the Crow could be anyone. I mean,
and that's one thing. I wrote this like outline of the female Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Probably back in 2001, 2. And I'm like, why do we not have a female Crow?
I mean, that's another way to keep it fresh too. I mean, every movie you can go anywhere from like a teenage girl to like an old man. I mean, the possibilities are endless. That's how you keep it fresh. I mean, it could be almost like Doctor Who now. I mean, it could be a man, it could be a woman, it could,
I think that you're limiting yourself if you don't make it something other than just a dude.
Exactly.
Like, everyone who is the Crow is like a mid to late 20s dude.
Mm-hmm. And that's,
or maybe early 30s.
And I like the idea you had where they can access the memories of the other crows, because then if they're like fighting with like weapons and stuff, I mean, if you're like, oh, they had nothing like that in their life. Well, it's like, well, yeah, they're accessing the memories. Now they know how to use knives and swords and bows and arrows or whatever you're going to use.
And the Crow it really helps show that the Crow is an entity
mm-hmm.
that basically bonds with the soul to bring it back to seek the revenge.
It's like the Speed Force.
It's not just the person.
Almost, it's like the Speed Force.
Yes, and like we said before, we're not talking about the sequel to The Crow, the Catwoman, because there's no room for that here.
Yeah, no, if they model this on anything, you model it on that first Crow movie. That was like the perfect movie. I watched it so many times. All the dialogue we've been talking about, I remember it all. And tell you how much I love this movie. Like, I think it was around the time this movie. Yeah, it had to have been around the time this movie came out. I got my first DVD, my first CD player. What was the very first CD I ever got?
Ooh, it's the soundtrack with Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes, the soundtrack. I played that
I
over and
remember
over. I just sat in my room, played that over and over. I did homework. I was reading, whatever I was doing, man. I listened to that thing over and over. I think I still might have it
I quote often when it rains and people get depressed. I'm like, can't rain all the
all the
time.
time.
I mean, I went as the Crow for Halloween before. It's just a really interesting concept and idea. And I think one problem I always had with every Crow movie was somehow the bad guy knows what it is and knows to kill the Crow. And that's why with my ideas we learn less of the villain
Mm-hmm.
and they're just experiencing her revenge, and it's more about her as a character dealing with what she's dealing with, and the idea that this mysticism or whatever could be real compared to where it seems like it's accepted immediately.
I've had that thought before. I was like, oh, why does the villain have to go after the Crow every time? But like, that's their kryptonite. I mean, every movie, if they're completely indestructible, everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's boring. I know where it's gonna go. They're indestructible. They're gonna kill the bad guys. And I mean, look at it these days. I mean, you kind of have to give those villains a little bit of time, because then people are gonna be like, they're two-dimensional cardboard cutouts every time. It's just target practice for the Crow every time. We know nothing about these villains. Blah, blah, blah. But I mean, the movie works. I think the movie works so well for so many people because I mean, everyone can relate. Everyone has at least one moment in their life where they feel like they've been slighted, or something's gone. People have perpetrated injustice against them. Maybe not murder.
I
but
mean, I understand the argument for wanting to give deep villains,
mm-hmm.
and I think that also comes. I kind of think back to, have you ever seen the horror film Sinister?
I don't think so.
The whole film in Sinister is done from the point of view of the main character. So we only experience the villain's quote unquote activities through what the main character discovers. And later we learned there's a lot of stuff that we could have seen as other scenes about what he was doing behind the scene, like the villain was doing, but we're only walking it through the main character. And if you can create a strong main character and voice, you can do that. But the problem is like, let's use Thor 2, for example. We have a great character, a great actor, but they gave Malekith nothing to do. And we get cut scenes of Malekith and his people where those scenes could be developed to developing the character. But if we don't work on actually having those cutscenes to develop the character, we see the villains more as a force of nature than an actual character. It's something for our hero to go up against.
Well, see,
the other thought I was just having as you were talking is what you could do is you could do a scene where, say, in this setting, we have Brandon, the cop, who is trying to help Victoria out, and it's the final battle or whatever, and he gets like outnumbered or whatever, and she sends the Crow to actually help. And during that time, the Crow is injured, and they don't realize by injuring the Crow, they injured her. And then it kind of hits them then, like, oh, well. And then they actually try to hurt the Crow, and it's hurting her. That way we can get in that angle of her being weakened in the Crow, but it's not like in every other Crow movie, it's like the Crow is their power. We must destroy the Crow and sever the tie. Like they automatically know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't have to be the villain killing the Crow every time. It could be something, I don't know. I don't know how you would like anger the Crow or whatever. Just be like, okay, well, I'm going to take away half my power. Or not even like injuring the Crow, but someone finds a way to block its powers or something. I don't know.
It's just, I mean, we know that there's been like, I picked this one because it's a franchise that I like. But also, I mean, there's been so many talks of rebooting The Crow, and they had a director, then they switched and had another director. They had a story. They had was it Luke Evans was signed on, and then now they've talked about having Jason Momoa take over, and I'm just like, why do you have to reboot it? Like, there's nothing with The Crow as a franchise that says reboot when you could just make a new Crow film, and if you want to reboot it, you could do like what I said, use the first film as a template, go back to the source material and pull out some things, but create a new character and just make a new film.
But yeah, I just don't know. Like, unless you like brand it reboot, everyone's gonna be like, oh, what is this, the fifth or sixth one? I don't. I think they think like high numbers, high sequel number just equals.
Well, I mean, look at technically, what is James Bond, like Spectre was like James Bond 20 something.
Yeah.
Star Trek with Chris Pine was like Star Trek 11 because it was an in continuity reboot.
But I mean, they really don't James Bond, like they don't reboot, but unofficially, I guess they do because it's always a new actor, and now Bond has like cell phones and stuff. Sean Connery didn't have that stuff,
Poor guy.
But I'm just saying. So back in the day, James Bond had the technology of the time. Now James Bond has the technology of today, plus probably some futuristic stuff.
Period pieces can work if done right. I mean, Wonder Woman pulled that, And
well, that's what I said. If they want to make this fresh and they want to get a ton of movies out of it, make each one a period piece. Don't set everyone in the present.
And the more I think about how neat it would be for the story is like if you did like a Victorian era where a woman has even less social power than she does in modern society, and she's the victim, and how that would just be done. It would give her even more fuel to return as the Crow and make such a stronger character. So man, now you got me rolling. But I like the idea of like straight up 1800 Western Crow, medieval Crow, even like 1950s Crow would be kind of cool. Play a little bit more of that fun B-level horror. Era.
Old West Crow got the cowboy hat, got the duster jacket, got the 6 guns.
And then you could all, like I said, tie them. They're tied together through the Crow as an entity. It doesn't have to be.
And like I said, you don't have to go linear. First movie said present day. Second one could be Old West. I mean, you can jump all over the place. But I was thinking your point to the villains. I think you kind of have to flesh them out a little just to show how evil they are. So when the Crow kills them, you're just like, yes, finally, he or she killed them. Yes.
And I wouldn't, like I said, like for this one, I would shoot it like kind of like the villain, more of just being straight up an antagonist. But with each film, you would develop the story different. You wouldn't want to fall into that template of, the other films where it's like up, death, back, mystery. So like, villain is actually some sort of like weird cult leader. So if you did like a Western one, you could start it off like immediately with the two characters being best friends, partners, and one betrays the other one and kills it. And then you have your dual stories of the Crow and then the antagonist.
But most of the movies you want the villains to be pretty evil. But what if one movie, say it's like set in the present and like a guy or woman's kid is killed in like a convenience store holdup or something, but then at the end of the movie, the Crow realizes that the guy who killed their kid was just robbing the store because he needed money to feed his kid or something. And he's conflicted at that point.
Of just being like where you take the story is each time can be different. It doesn't have to be, like we said, that formulaic.
Yes. Of mix it up, because that's what I'm saying.
The bad guy is this.
I think that's part of the. I think that's kind of. I think it wasn't as good as the original, but I think Crow City of Angels wouldn't have been that bad, but I think that's what killed us. They went all formulaic because now after that movie, everyone was like, okay, I'm going to know the drill. Somebody comes back as the Crow. They face 4 underlings. Then they get to the main bad guy. There's some mystic mumbo jumbo, yada, yada. It's going to be the same thing every time.
And, you know, you could almost do like an anthology series, like in the vein of, I don't watch the show, but like I know that every season of American Horror Story is like a completely different setting, time period. Like it doesn't really connect with the other thing. You could do that where like the first season's a couple of like maybe 5 or 6 episodes, and then the second season would be Western Crow or
exactly.
There's a lot. It's a very lucrative property. It's just you have to, because you could also deal with the Crow doesn't rest until it's got its revenge. So what happens when it's never able to get the revenge or find the person that really is the main one that wronged them?
Why do you think, I mean, the Marvel franchise does so good? Because they have like their own, you know, different genres in that. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is your space adventure. Thor is your sword and sorcery. Captain America, especially Winter Soldier, that was like your spy thriller. You know, Iron Man's like the high tech stuff. You have different genres in this whole thing, and that's what they can do with the Crow. You know, you can do present day, you can do Old West, you can do Victorian England, you can do medieval, you can do anytime you want. You can do future stuff.
That would be interesting.
I mean,
all right, final thoughts.
Final
thoughts there, Phil.
Like I said, I mean, the first Crow is so sacred to me. At first thought, I'm just like, don't remake it. But if they do what we said, you know, mix stuff up.
Yeah, just give us a really good
different times
continuation sequel. Like, don't make it Eric Draven. Don't, you know, just make it something new.
Different times, make it men, make it women. You know, just keep it fresh every time.
Sailor? Ain't that right, Sailor?
Just keep it fresh every time so people can't see where you're going every movie.
All right. Sailor, you want to tell Phil, thank you for being on our podcast? She said, Phil.
I heard that was thanks enough.
All right. Well, thank you for being a part of us, Phil.
Why, thank you. Was there a quote at the end of that movie? Little things used to mean so much to Shelley. I used to think they were trivial, but believe me, nothing is trivial.